Morning. This meeting of the House Education Committee will come to order. Today is Wednesday, February 19th, and the time is 8:03 a.m. Members of House Education present are Co-Chair Representative Andy Story, Representative Grier Hopkins, Representative Chris Tuck, and myself, Co-Chair Harriet Drummond. We have a quorum to conduct business. Before we begin, please, everyone, silence your cell phones. Today, our recording secretary is Shannon McCain, and Doug Bridges is our LIO moderator, assisting with tech and teleconferencing support. Thank you both. Today, we will hear Representative Story's House Bill 155, Alaska Performance Scholarship Eligibility, followed by Representative Clayman's House Bill 181, Public Schools Mental Health Education. It is my intention to hold both of these bills today. First up, we have House Bill 155. Representative Story, please come forward, put your name and affiliation on the record, and make your presentation.
Good morning, Chair Drummond and members of the House Education Committee. I'm very excited to present this bill this morning. I have been a long time advocate for career tech education. I have wanted to have this bill happen for a long time as a school board member, and so I'm very pleased to introduce 155. It allows high school career and technical education credits to count towards eligibility for the Alaska Performance Scholarship. This is important for many reasons. This bill recognizes the value of CTE for all students, whether they are headed to college, apprenticeships, other post-secondary training, or entering the workforce. It opens the door for more students to take CTE courses. During our work as the DEED Budget Subcommittee, we were presented with a chart that shows a decline in the Alaska Performance Scholarship applicants. It's my hope that this bill helps reverse this trend and more students will see college and post-secondary training as viable options. CTE leads to improved high school graduation rates. In Alaska data, this shows that students who are concentrators, which take 2 or more in the same career area, are 19% more likely to graduate than their counterparts. And again, concentrators are those students who take 2 credits of CTE classes in a single CTE program of study or career cluster. And of course, CTE prepares students for skilled jobs and many pathways to future success. And I want to point out that right now we are trying to have a teacher pipeline going, and we have started many Educator Rising classes in our schools, but they cannot count towards the APS scholarship right now because we do not allow CTE classes to count. And I think you could take a year of a home build classes, and that would very much as a hands-on applied math, and that does not count towards APS if you want to go on to a 4-year degree of some sort or other post-secondary education. There are 2 avenues for students to incorporate CTE courses in their APS application. Under the math and science option, a student may replace 1 credit of social studies with 1 credit of career technical education. A note here, a credit is equivalent to 1 year or 2 semesters of coursework. Under the social studies and language option in APS, a student may replace 2 years of world language with 2 years of career tech education, 1 year of which includes courses of increasing rigor with the career cluster. These options are spelled out in the Alaska Performance Scholarship Checklist in your packet. I'd like to turn this presentation over to Mary Hockela now to go over to the contents of the full packet.
Thank you, Representative Story. I'd like to note that Representative Zolkuski joined us at about 8:05. Good morning.
Good morning. Mary Hockela for the record, staff to Representative Andy Story. So in your packet, you, of course, have the sponsor statement, the bill. There are 2 fiscal notes, each of which are 0. We will be receiving an amended fiscal note from the Department of Education. We caught an error, an inadvertent error last evening, but it will be forthcoming this afternoon or today sometime, we anticipate. But both are 0. Then you come to the, I think one of the charts, graphics that is very helpful is to look at the Alaska Performance Scholarship Checklist, which is what students utilize as they look at their course work. And in the lettering in green shows the options that are being created under House Bill 155. And you'll see under the math science curriculum the option of 1 credit CTE in lieu of 1 credit of social studies. Under the social studies and language curriculum, the world language or 2 credits of CTE, with the caveat that 1 year sequentially more rigorous content within a career cluster, which is often also categorized as a pathway, because that's where the research shows you have profound benefits in terms of graduation rates and success rates for students. You'll note on the second page, there's a descriptor on the bottom left-hand corner of math and science curriculum option, and in the little green, it's kind of a little down low, but or CTE course, because they list the other options students have, and you'll see that in statute, and CTE is now one of the allowable options. The next page is a graphic provided by the Department of Education. It was May 9th, 2019. We just received an updated version I will provide, but it's the same it's the same trend lines and clear value of concentrator status on success and graduation rates. The next page in your packet is from the National Career Clusters. It comes from a link directly from the Department of Education's website and a link to the 16 established career clusters. So you have a sense of what we mean by career clusters. And that then we'll go on. The other items that follow are from presenters who and letters of support. And at the very back, we have the 2018 addendum to the State of Alaska Career and Technical Education Plan. So that is a wonderful reference about all things CTE and the really high-quality work, the collaborative work that's been done between the departments. And I might point out, the very first is where it says, "Dear Alaskans." It is on, the bullets, I think, are very well-written and succinct. CTE is for all learners. CTE leads to improved high school graduation rates. CTE engages modern learners. And CTE prepares our workforce for high-paying jobs. So a wonderful reference for you. Thank you. I hadn't.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions from the members? Representative Tuck.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On your on the Alaska Performance Scholarship, when we look at math and science curriculum, the 2 columns there on the application, I see that we have social studies can be, on the math and science curriculum, can be credited to 1 CTE replace or option. Is that possible to do that underneath the social studies and language curriculum also? Can you replace one of the social studies for an optional CTE in that column?
At this, no, through the chair, Mary Hockler for the record, the way the bill is written, there's 2 different options. So right now, the way the bill is written, under the social studies and language curriculum, the only option would be to replace world languages. Now, that doesn't preclude them taking world languages. It just allows them for the APS scholarship eligibility criteria that can be replaced. But we did look at a wide range of options, but one of the things we wanted to be sure is that there was that sequentially more rigorous content. So under 1 track, having 2 credits, which is full 2 years. And I might also point out for the record, it's very important. We spent time looking closely at and talking with NACTEC and one of the variable term CTE programs in rural Alaska. And the semester equivalent is what matters, which the school district can, they have the authority to determine what constitutes a semester. Because in the variable term programs, they take shorter intensives. Collectively, they can add up to a semester's credit. It's unlike the urban schools that might have a semester-long class throughout. So just wanted to put that on the record.
Yeah, thank you.
Chair Drummond, I have a comment on that too.
Representative Story, go ahead.
Because I think, Representative Tuck, you were thinking what I was thinking in the first options. And when we look at the bill, the House Bill 155 on page 1, the reason why it's under the social studies is the way it traditionally has been read is there are some options, 1 year of which may, this is line 12, 1 year of which may include a foreign language, Alaska Native language, fine arts, or cultural heritage, or career and technical education. So that's where it was added. It wasn't given an option in the language arts or, yeah, under the math science.
Representative Hopkins.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing this bill forward. Representative Story, I like the idea, and encouraging people for different tracks I think is critical, especially because they still would go through college, so you learn more. And I wish this was available when I was in school. Additionally, so there are state graduation requirements that you have to take certain types of credits to graduate, and I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what those are, but replacing things like foreign language with the CTE credits for the ACP or for the performance scholarship, would that replace the requirements for graduation, or would that person still have to take those foreign languages in order to graduate?
Thank you. Through the chair. Credits very different. There are the state graduation credits, and this would not interfere with that because there still is room within the student's day. But credits do vary through each high school. They might add something or take it, but it's our belief that this would fit in nicely and not interfere with that.
Excellent. And then a quick follow-up.
Go ahead.
In Fairbanks, there's a strong CTE program that works with our local union associations through their apprenticeship program to allow students to take some of those apprenticeship programs as they graduate for credit. Do you know if this program would work with those apprenticeship programs through the local trades associations?
Through the chair, I believe so, but I will work to verify that.
And you can reach out to my office. We can put you in touch with the correct people. I appreciate that. And then one more question.
Go ahead.
I'm always full of them in the morning. And this might be in a fiscal note, but with the ACPE's ability to maintain this program, where they have to cover the costs of servicing the performance scholarship as it is now, they just accept those costs and take a loss. Would this negatively impact their ability to pay for it, or how would that work for the Alaska Commission on Post-Secondary Education?
Through the chair, we do. Thank you.
Representative Hopkins, Stephanie Butler is on the phone.
Oh, okay.
When she makes her presentation, you can ask her that question.
That works. Thank you.
Okay, my question is, in terms of the second year of CTE required to be in a sequence of increasing rigor within a career cluster. In other words, the student could not take a semester of architecture and construction and then go to health science. You would want them, this bill requires them to then take a second semester in architecture and construction rather than exploring another lower level beginning CTE class.
Madam Chair, this is Mary Hockler for the record. Now you'll see that would be the 2 credits is where there would be the 1 year sequentially more. And sometimes they're called dabblers, where people are taking a variety of CTE courses. That doesn't seem to have the same robust benefits as those who have some level of concentrator status. Mm-hmm. Within the 2 years, having 2 of those courses in sequence within that pathway. And to get into more detail, we do have Deb Riddle on the line from the Department of Education, from the CTE unit there.
I have her online for questions.
Right,
Would you
but
like her to weigh in right now
Sure.
on that one? Okay. Deb Riddle, are you on the phone with us?
I am.
Hey, did you hear the question?
Yes, I did. So this is Deb Riddle, the Department of Education. As far as for concentrators, the difference between a concentrator and a dabbler is we want to make sure that in order for them to move forward in high school, if they are taking 2 years of a pathway or a cluster, it provides them the opportunity to earn some additional certifications, to become, to be really solid in their understanding of the field that they want to go into, and then kind of make some headway to get them moved into a post-secondary type situation. Whereas a dabbler will, could take 4 different semester-long courses, and that doesn't provide the rigor or the opportunities for continuing on into post-secondary.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions for Ms. Riddle? Okay. All right. Let's move on to invited testimony. Seeing no additional questions. I have, let's see, Doug Walrath is okay. Brief at ease. Okay, back on the record, I wanted to get our invited testimony in order. First up, we have Missy Fraze with the Anchorage School District. Missy, are you on the phone with us?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead and make your presentation. Introduce yourself and your affiliation.
Thank you, Representatives, Madam Chair Story, and Madam Chair Drummond. My name is Missy Fraze. I am the CTE Director for the Anchorage School District, as well as the current president of the Alaska Association of Career and Technical Education. So thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony today in support of House Bill 155. I do appreciate the work of Representative Story and her team to draft this bill. They have listened to stakeholder feedback and worked with us to ensure that this bill would support Alaskan students. As the president of the Alaska Association for Career and Technical Education, I do work with school districts and post-secondary institutions across Alaska. Our board and our members of the association, we are all united in the mission to ensure all Alaska students do have access to quality career and technical education, and we do emphasize quality. We provide professional development annually, and we support the growing need for CTE in our state. And while CTE, or maybe as you once knew it, vocational education, as it was once known, it's been part of our education system for well over 100 years. But the outcomes of CTE programs have changed significantly in those last 100 years. And gone are vocational programs that were isolated, and advanced academics were on a separate track. And gone are vocational programs that only focused on low skill or entry-level careers or homemaking. Today, CTE programs in Alaska prepare students for highly technical careers in oil and gas production, mining, maritime, healthcare, aviation, telecommunications, and much more. CTE programs today are preparing the next generation of engineers, dental assistants, data analysts, GIS technicians, educators, and phlebotomists. And what all of these careers have in common is the opportunity to begin a pathway in high school and the need to continue on to post-secondary education or training. In Alaska, CTE programs provide some of the only career exploration opportunities for students, which is critical to helping them understand how their skills, their interests, and aspirations align with the workforce needs. And without CTE, many students will make college choices based on little to no experiential factors, meaning they have zero experience in a field before deciding they're going to go off to college and be a doctor, a nurse, an engineer. While this can work for some students, most will not make informed post-secondary education and training decisions, which can lead to large amounts of debt. In the United States, I think we're holding at an average of $37,000 in student debt. Dissatisfaction with their post-secondary program, and then drop out. What we know is that students who concentrate in the CTE pathway graduate at a higher rate than their peers. In Alaska, that CTE concentrator has a graduation rate of 95%. And CTE students are bright, they're driven, and they're highly skilled. Many CTE students are already earning college credit before they even leave high school. And another important statistic I want to share is that 41% of Alaska CTE students are economically disadvantaged. That's a trend that has been on the rise for the last 5 years. So we have to ask why CTE isn't recognized as an important component of post-secondary readiness. So as our nation, and I believe our state, has begun to recognize the critical role that CTE plays in closing our skills gap and preparing our next workforce, we just must ensure that our policies reflect that priority. And we have to allow students to take full advantage of post-secondary financial resources in preparation for in-demand careers. And I'm going to leave you with a story of a student I'll call Jay. She and students just like her are the reason I'm here to testify today. These are the students who deserve the opportunity to qualify for the Alaska Performance Scholarship. Jay is a full-time student here in my district, and she currently has a 3.8 GPA. Great attendance, high accolades from her teachers, her counselors, her administrators. Next week, student Jay starts an internship at a local business that's focusing on sustainable home goods and exploring sustainable food sourcing in Alaska. She spent the last 6 months doing market research. The last month doing market research for this company, and recently started with her class to earn her Lean Sigma 6 certification. And a Lean Sigma 6 certification is actually an industry certification used to develop lean business models, cutting waste through production, cutting waste through more effective business models. And this student knows she's going to college, but she doesn't qualify for APS because our policy currently prioritizes foreign language over highly marketable skills and dual credit that she has already earned in her CTE courses. And so I'm not here to argue that foreign language is less important than a CTE pathway, but I'm just here to urge you to recognize that CTE is just as important as a foreign language in preparing students for post-secondary education and training. Thank you for allowing me the time to be here today to share with you why I think it's so critically important for us to recognize the value of students who are choosing career pathways at an early age and pursuing that into post-secondary education.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fraze. We have questions from the committee. Representative Hopkins.
Thank you, Ms. Fraze. This is Representative Hopkins from Fairbanks. Thank you for your testimony and your support on this bill. I like it the more I hear. But in the bill packet is a list of the Juneau, Douglas High School, and Thunder Mountain High School career technical education programs. And I was wondering if the Anchorage School Districts, how many of their different type of CTE programs and classes offer the concentration versus just a dabbler. Like, so if you're going into, for example, auto mechanics, does it go from auto mechanics to small engines? Are there 2 levels of video production? Are there 2 levels of the phlebotomy classes you were talking about, or enough to qualify for these courses or for this performance scholarship?
In the Anchorage School District, we do have very robust CTE offerings. We touch on all 15 career clusters, and offer the ability to concentrate in every one of those. Our offerings, even though we have them, they are regionalized within our district because we can't offer everything at every building. And we also have our King Tech High School here in Anchorage that actually is we provide transportation from every single high school into King Tech so all students have equal access to our programmings. And within this building, many of our programs have dual credit with the University of Alaska, as well as our high school programs do. So we do have the ability for many of our students to concentrate. And we have about 456 students every year, give or take 20, that are CTE concentrators.
Thank you.
This is Co-Chair Drummond, Ms. Fraze. The 400 and some odd students, are those the full-time students at King Tech, or are they all of the CTE students at every high school, as well as the King Tech students?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It is all students at all schools. So we do have concentrators here at King Tech High School, but that accounts for programs across our district.
Okay. In my life around education, I've heard more than once that children kind of know what they want to do as adults in elementary school, somewhere around the 2nd or 3rd grade. Is there, and I know the Associated General Contractors used to do a program where they went into the schools and introduced kids to careers in the trades. Early on, both in elementary school and middle school. Is that still happening in the Anchorage School District?
We have lots of partnerships with AGC is one of them. A lot of our local industry organizations we have partnerships with. In the Anchorage School District, we offer CTE all the way down to the 6th grade. So we do have students at all 10 of our what we call our neighborhood middle schools. We have CTE career exploration happening. And this summer in the Anchorage School District, we're launching a summer intensive for middle school students to begin exploring up to 6 different career clusters. They'll be outgoing 8th graders, incoming 9th graders, so we kind of still consider it middle school, but give them the opportunity to explore up to 6 different career clusters so that they can start making some of those informed decisions about preparing for post-secondary opportunities, career education, further training. And sometimes the value, there's the value in the student, that light coming on and them saying, this is what I want to do, how do I get there? But there's also tremendous value in a student recognizing they don't want to do it as well. And we see students who say, you know, when I talked about the experiential factors and influencing students, when they don't have experiences in a career field, they're not making decisions based on actually doing something. It's the idea of doing something. And when we give them the opportunity to actually do something, sometimes they learn that maybe the healthcare career field isn't for them because they don't like to, you know, touch somebody's foot or draw blood or do something like that. And so that exploration we see as valuable all the way down into middle school.
Great. Glad to hear it. Any further questions for Ms. Fraze from the committee? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much. Next up, I have Stephanie Butler, the Executive Director of the Commission on Post-Secondary Education. Stephanie, are you with us this morning?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Please put your name and affiliation on the record and go ahead and speak to us.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning. For the record, my name is Stephanie Butler, and I'm the Executive Director for the Alaska Commission on Post-Secondary Education. Thank you for the invitation to provide testimony today regarding HB 155 and the expansion of the Alaska Performance Scholarship eligibility requirements to include the high school CTE pathway. The Commission on Post-Secondary Education is very aware of the importance of CTE opportunities for Alaska students and for Alaska's economy as a whole, and supports CTE as being integral to the future success of our students and our state. If passed, HB 155 will provide more Alaska students with the opportunity to become eligible for the APS and will specifically expand options for high school CTE students. The APS program currently provides for a CTE award to students who meet curricular and GPA requirements and meet score requirements on the WorkKeys Career Readiness Assessment. The CTE award may be used for programs of study offering a post-secondary career training certificate. However, since program inception, only 220 students have earned a CTE award, potentially due to the absence of a CTE pathway for earning eligibility. A CTE pathway is becoming increasingly urgent based on data that 65% of Alaska's best jobs in 2025 will require a post-secondary credential, including a high need for an Alaska resident workforce with CTE credentials. This bill sends a needed message to all Alaska high school students saying CTE is valued and CTE is supported. And through the chair, in response to Representative Hopkins' earlier question, this bill does not increase the costs for ACPE to manage the APS program. With that, thank you for your commitment to Alaska students and for the opportunity to provide this testimony.
Very good, Stephanie. Appreciate it. Any further questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much. We'll go on now to invite Norm Wooten up front. Good morning. You know the drill, Norm.
Yes, I do. Madam Co-Chair, members of the House Education Committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify. My name is Norm Wooten. I'm the Executive Director of the Association of Alaska School Boards. I'm very pleased to be here this morning to present testimony in favor of the passage of HB 155. AASB is a strong supporter of opportunities for students in every career pathway, and specifically for career technical education. But it's easy for me to testify this morning because my passion is also CTE and providing that opportunity for students. And I'm going to talk about a little bit, if allow me the latitude to talk a little bit about anecdotal evidence that of why I think that CTE and this bill is particularly important for students. You know, there was a time back in my early days on the school board, those many years ago in Kodiak, on the Kodiak Island Borough School District Board of Education, that CTE, or what we call vocational technical education at that time, sort of lost its value in the academic world, and many districts were, if not actually dismantling their vocational technical programs, they were devaluing them, and they were kind of a pathway for students who could not be successful in a purely academic setting, and so you know, every student was encouraged to go to college, and high school was a pathway to provide that pipeline into college. We realized our mistake in Kodiak, as well as other districts all across the state of Alaska, and even throughout the nation, and that every student was not college bound, and every student should not be college bound, although CTE was a pathway, you know, through college for many of those students. And so schools began to rebuild their vocational technical programs, or what we call career technical education now. You know, as a 55-year resident of Alaska, I recall during the pipeline days about the number of pipeline construction workers that we brought from outside to build a pipeline. And that was frustrating to us, of those that lived here. And in fact, Alaska Airlines even had a partnership with Continental Airlines for an airplane route that went from Fairbanks to Anchorage to Seattle to Dallas to Houston. It was called a Pipeline Express. And its specific purpose was to bring pipeline workers up from the outside to Alaska to take jobs that those of us that lived in Alaska considered our jobs. and that was a frustrating to us, a situation to us, and I don't ever want to see that happen again. So CTE is a passion of mine and a goal of districts. We're always going to have the need for mechanics, for plumbers, for electricians, for carpenters, for heavy equipment operators, and the list just goes on and on. In my own case, after I got out of the military, I worked as a crane operator and a pile driver for a number of years. And in fact, those jobs paid for my attending college and getting a degree in civil engineering and a postgraduate degree in construction management. And without those jobs, I would not have been able to do that. So there, my personal passion comes for having those jobs. This bill, HB 155, recognizes the need for those desiring to enter the trades. HB 155 recognizes the value of high school CTE courses for those who choose to go into the trades and those who choose to go into some other form of post-secondary education, i.e. a college degree. Finally, by recognizing the value of those courses, it provides a pathway for those students to obtain post-secondary training as well as certifications to enter the trades. Madam Co-Chair, I would say in conclusion that HB 155 is not only a good bill for students, it's a good bill for Alaska. Thank you, and I would be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Thank you so much, Norm. I totally appreciate your perspective. I graduated from the Bronx High School of Science, and it was extremely academically rigorous. I think 99.8% of the students went on to college. But I took a class called Scientific Techniques Lab. You know what that is? Wood shop, metal shop. It was incredible. And to this day, even if I never took another shop class, I know how to do basic stuff around the house because of the things I learned, how screws work, I built a thermostat as my project. It was just amazing. But that was a long time ago. So I'm glad we've come full circle and are bringing this back and actually acknowledging it. It's been coming back into our schools for years now, and acknowledging it and creating a pathway, I think is excellent. Any questions for Norm from the committee? All right, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Let's see, next up we have Sean Arnold, President, Alaska Superintendents Association. Sean, are you online with us?
Yes, ma'am, I am.
Yes, good morning. Put your name and affiliation on the record and proceed with your testimony.
Yeah, good morning. For the record, I'm Sean Arnold. I'm the superintendent of Valdez City Schools. I'm also the current president for the Alaska Superintendents Association. So, Madam Co-Chair and members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on House Bill 155. And I'm testifying on behalf of my school district and our association in support of 155. Let me start by saying I recognize the critical, important role career and technical education plays in student learning, and I applaud the efforts to expand eligibility requirements for students who wish to continue their education through the Alaska Performance Scholarship. All students can benefit from CTE, whether college-bound or not. I think much of the testimony has been heard about the benefits of CTE. We do know that students enrolled in CTE courses, especially those that are part of a concentrated CTE program, are more likely to graduate than their non-CTE peers. So much better results. Here in Valdez, it is a struggle to kind of staff and kind of maintain a strong CTE program just because of our location and size. But we do feel it's an important part of our offerings within our small high school. We have incorporated high-quality CTE courses to address the goals of college and career readiness, and it provides learning opportunities that are appealing for students who might otherwise be at risk of leaving high school. Our programs ensure that the coursework is simultaneously aligned to rigorous standards and post-secondary expectations, and informed by and built to address the skills needed in the specific career pathways. So it's not our traditional kind of shop classes, but it's more, and I say the traditional ones that I had taken, 30 years ago, wood shop, electrical, much more robust than that to prepare them for everything that they're going to face. We do offer some of those courses, such as small engines, construction, that offers them an experience and kind of, if they'd like to pursue it further. It doesn't prepare them for everything that they need to kind of go into the workforce afterwards, but it kind of gets them, I guess, a sampling to kind of whet their appetite for further careers. The Millwright program is something that we specifically offer in our high school. We offer Millwright 1 and 2. Our students, over the last 2 years, we have had 10 students who have completed Millwright 1 and 2 in our high school. They've gone on to our local college, Prince William Sound College, to complete Millwright 3, 4, and 5. And upon graduation, they were certified millwrights, and each and every one of those students were hired locally to work on the pipeline operations, which was a huge measure of success. And those students had an opportunity to earn a salary much higher than probably most of my staff, most of my teachers. And so it works for us. It's something that it gives these opportunities for students that otherwise wouldn't have it. And it's also an important thing for our superintendents across the state. We've made it one of our positions that we support, that CTE courses there, it helps Alaska's economic growth and stability, that it also gives students the opportunity to build future-ready skills. The alignment of CTE programs, it meets the needs of local, tribal, regional, and state labor markets. So with that, I just want to thank you for this opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Any questions? All right, thank you so much. I have Doug Walrath on the phone now from Nome. Doug, are you with us?
I am. Good morning. For the record, Doug Walrath, Director of the Northwestern Alaska Career and Technical Center in Nome, otherwise known as NACTEC. Calling in support of House Bill number 155. I appreciate this bill and Representative Story and her staff's effort with this, and appreciate the opportunity last week to review this and go back and forth with Mary on this as I was down in Juneau. I'll be brief in my testimony, as Missy Fraze and Sean Arnold did a really nice job of recapping the importance of CTE in the state. And here, I think just to offer and add to it that CTE, what we see and what we find, the hands-on training that's provided really helps provide a deeper and contextualized understanding for students that without CTE, there's perhaps a significant portion of students that would be lost in the bookwork portion of what comes to life for them when they work with their hands and helps them. It complements the learning. The element that Mary had offered earlier, that our conversation on behalf of students that are participating in CTE in rural Alaska was a line of this that notes 2 semesters of sequentially more rigorous content. And the only concern that I had was to note the semester equivalent, which Mary has already brought up, of just noting that there's many of the students that we serve have limited opportunities of CTE at their village sites. So traveling into a residential program, the programs are delivered in 2 or 4 week intensive formats. So using that term semester equivalent is important. So I appreciate the outreach to Deb Riddle and others to review this, and certainly would say from the testimony of all those before me, it's been very comprehensive. to include a lot of viewpoints. So I thank you, and I am here to answer any questions should there be any directed to me.
Okay, thank you very much, Doug. Any questions for Mr. Walrath? Thank you very much for joining us today. Last on my list of invited testimony is Kathy LeCompte. Kathy, are you on the phone with us?
Yes, I am, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead and introduce yourself and your affiliation and give us your testimony.
Good morning. I'm Kathy LeCompte. I'm the director at the Alaska Vocational Technical Center in Seward, Alaska. And I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony in support of HB 155 that will expand the eligibility to high school students for their CTE pathway on the Alaska Performance Scholarship application. The Alaska Vocational Technical Center is a division of the Department of Labor and Workforce Development. We are owned and operated by the state of Alaska. We are your technical training center and provide affordable, accessible, and flexible post-secondary workforce training to Alaskans. We are a Title IV school, which means we are eligible to take federal Pell Grants, including APS students. Over the past 3 years, we've served over 75 students in post-secondary workforce training from 29 different communities. The reason that I'm excited about this is twofold. I've been in post-secondary education in the state of Alaska for 20 years. And that entire time I was either at a community and technical college or I was at a community campus where workforce development and workforce training was first and foremost. And I saw firsthand the life-changing experience that a student coming from high school in a career and technical education path had as they participated in post-secondary education. Often they come to us from high school feeling insecure about their skills in math and reading, but once they get into their post-secondary training and they start learning applied skills in construction and welding and automotive and diesel heavy, they excel in that math where they thought that they weren't going to be successful before. We like to say at AvTech that we change lives for providing opportunities for success. And we see that success as it translates into our completion rates of over 90% average over 5 years' time. Over 90% of the students that come to AvTech complete. And out of that 90%, over 90% then are placed in jobs. I'm enthusiastic about this bill because I think it will open up opportunities for more students for this type of success, for that pathway. We don't ask that it's an either-or proposition to go to vocational training or to go to university training, but this is an option that should be available for more students as they decide what they're going to do next once they complete high school. Again, I just wanted to say thank you. I support the passage of this bill, and I want to say thank you for the opportunity to speak to this from a perspective of a former CTE kid myself. I'm a proud member of the Distributed Education Clubs of America, took CTE pathway and later went on to college, but also as a provider of post-secondary career and technical education and a witness to the life-changing experiences that students have once they make that decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. LeCompte. I appreciate your testimony. I had the pleasure of getting a tour of AvTech. I think it was in the summer of my freshman year here in 2013, and I'm extremely impressed with what AvTech has to offer Alaskans. Any questions for Ms. LeCompte from anyone? Maybe we should organize a field trip to AvTech in the interim for the education committees. I think that would be valuable. Thank you very much for joining us today. I believe that is all the invited testimony that we have. And I will now open public testimony. Is anyone in the room, is there anyone in the room who is interested in testifying on this bill? And I don't think we have anyone online. I will keep public testimony open as I plan to hold this bill over into the next session. And I would also request that members have any proposed amendments to House Bill 155 to have them in my office by 2 p.m. on Friday. Thank you. Now we will continue our work on House Bill 181. Will the sponsor and staff come forward and continue?
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for allowing us to continue our presentation on House Bill 181 at this time. I'm Representative Matt Clayman from House District 21 in West Anchorage. This is Sophie Jonas, my staff member. According to the 2017 Alaska High School Youth Risk Behavior Survey, which surveyed 1,343 students in grades 9 through 12 from 40 high schools across the state, more than 1 in 3 students reported feeling sad or hopeless every day for a period of at least 2 weeks during the 12 months preceding the survey. Furthermore, the SAMHSA National Survey on Drug Use and Health estimates that in 2015 and 2016, 15% of adolescents aged 12 to 17 reported that they had at least one major depressive episode during the 12 months preceding the survey. Both of these studies are included in your packets for reference. House Bill 181 requires the Alaska State Board of Education and Early Development and the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development to develop guidelines for instruction in mental health education. The board and the department would develop the guidelines in consultation with the Alaska Department of Health and Social Services, counselors, educators, students, administrators, and representatives of national and state mental health organizations, including rural Native health organizations. The national and state mental health organizations include, but are not limited to, the National Council for Behavioral Health, Providence Health and Services Alaska, South Central Foundation, Anchorage Community Mental Health Services, North Star Behavioral Health System, and the National Alliance in Mental Health and Illness in Alaska. After guidelines have been developed, the Alaska State Board of Education and Early Development and the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development will be responsible for implementation throughout the Alaska school system, utilizing existing school health education positions to assist in statewide program coordination. As with existing health education curriculum, the Department of Education and Early Development and the Department of Health and Social Service and the Council on Domestic Violence and Sexual Assault will provide technical assistance to school districts in the development of curricula. The state has a responsibility to treat the current mental health challenges facing our youth as a serious public health issue. By creating mental health education guidelines to include mental health education within the required health education curriculum, House Bill 181 aims to decrease the stigma surrounding mental illness and increase students' knowledge of mental health, encouraging conversations around and understanding of this issue. And with that, I will now have my staff, Sophie Jonas, present a sectional analysis of the bill.
Good morning, Madam Co-Chair and members of the House Education Committee. For the record, my name is Sophie Jonas, and I am staff to Representative Matt Clayman. Section 1 of House Bill 181 adds intent language stating that it is the intent of the legislature that the Board of Education and Early Development develop guidelines for instruction in mental health in consultation with representatives of mental health organizations. Section 2 amends Alaska Statute 1430-360 by removing the word physical when referencing instruction for health education and adding mental health to the list of curriculum items each district includes in their health education programs. Section 3 amends Alaska Statute 1430-360 by clarifying that health guidelines developed by the Board of Education and Early Development must provide standards for instruction in mental health and be developed in consultation with the Department of Health and Social Services and representatives of national and state mental health organizations. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to present at this time we are happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
Representative Zulkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you so much, Representative Clayman, for bringing forward this important bill. I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the really profound statements that the students who came before the committee made during the initial hearing on Monday, making statements like students don't have the knowledge and words to name their symptoms, or students need knowledge in order to identify their own illnesses, and how powerful it was to hear them talk about needing the resources to put into words what they're experiencing as they're growing up. I was curious, I have a couple of questions relating to the fiscal note. In the fiscal note, it indicates that a state or national subject matter expert would be contracted to help facilitate the creation of these standards, and that travel resources are provided to help convene the meetings where I assume many of these standards would be developed. I was hoping you could speak to how that state or national subject matter expert may be selected and how individuals representing the variety of institutions would be selected for participating in the two-day convening.
Through the chair, Representative Zelkowski, I have to say we're a little bit surprised by the fiscal note because we believe the department already has adequate resources to basically conduct that facilitation, and the need to hire an outside contractor for the price they're suggesting doesn't seem necessary. When I look at in the packet, you've got both the current guidelines for health education in the state, which is called Skills for a Healthy Life, and then you also see the CDC standards, which is a one-page document. By adding a guideline about mental health education, the proposal is not that the board should have the complete curriculum. The idea would be you would leave it for the local districts to develop the individual curriculum, and so we frankly if we're really probably adding in practice 2 or 3 sentences at the most to the state guidelines, and we can't obviously add the CDC guidelines, but if we're really adding a matter of 2 or 3 sentences to the existing guidelines, and they would still probably fit on 2 pages, but just expand the curriculum, we don't see a need for hiring an outside consultant to do that work. And similarly, while I certainly think it would be important as part of typical school district conferences when districts get together to possibly talk more in detail about mental health education, again, we're a little bit surprised to see the suggestion that would have to be 2 large statewide conferences, because it seems like the kind of subject matter, there's enough information out. There's actually, the CDC has some discussion about appropriate things to include in mental health education, even though it's not part of their health education standards. And again, we would see that as something that could be pretty effectively managed through existing resources, and that the organizations that I think we would hope would participate would be more than happy to do it by teleconference, and wouldn't see a need to spend $60,000 to have 2 conventions. Although I can appreciate that concept, our response to the fiscal note was we never asked for that level of a big discussion. I mean, what we see, and I think we saw from the testimony, there's already in a lot of schools a lot of classes and a lot of places where they're addressing mental health, but they're not doing, some schools aren't, some schools are. And so again, we have skepticism about the fiscal note, even the portion where they say they're going to have to publish a whole booklet, and I'm looking at the current guidelines are 2 pages, and I'm a little bit surprised by the fiscal note.
Follow up?
Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you so much for clarifying your position as the sponsor. We had a hearing in Health and Social Services yesterday, and the Lower Kuskokwim School District, which is one of the larger school districts in my region, was talking about they have 10 social workers on staff, and they also have counselors that serve within their schools. And so I think, as you note, it's well received that there are schools that have resources of which they can kind of draw upon to help localize the curriculum. I'm curious if the department is speaking as invited testimony today, and I can...
No, we have Tamara Van Wy with the department is online for questions. That this might be appropriate.
Would now be an appropriate time to direct those questions to the department?
Sure. Tamara Van Wy, are you on the phone with us?
I am.
Okay, great. Did you hear the question? Or Representative Zelkowski, if you'd like to rephrase.
Sure. I was hoping that the department could speak to the fiscal note with regard to the contracting out for a state or national subject matter expert to develop the facilitation of the standards, as well as how the individuals would be selected for the convenings in Anchorage to help develop these further.
Certainly. For the record, my name is Tamara Van Wy. I'm Division Director for Innovation and Education Excellence at the Alaska Department of Education and Early Development. Through the chair, Representative Zelkowski, the fiscal note does represent the need for the department to do more than just add some language to our current set of standards. We do have a framework for updating our standards. Our current Skills for Healthy Life education standards haven't been updated in more than 20 years. And given how long it's been, our health standards really are in need of a comprehensive update, and simply updating those standards to include mental health education rather than conducting a global update to the standards would be, quite honestly, inefficient and really not produce the state health education standards that would be fully responsive to our district's needs. Our health education standards are voluntary and not broadly used at present, and really would not be likely to generate a lot of new interest in implementing unless they are fully updated. So, in short, just to add a couple of sentences about mental health education would probably not have a tremendous impact on what's happening in schools and districts across the state. And then as far as the selection for panels of folks who would convene to look at updating the standards, there is a process that the department uses. There are individuals who are invited to serve on standards review and update panels based on their expertise. And then the department also puts out basically calls across the state and asks for people who are, asks for folks who are interested to let us know of their interest and to provide us with some background on, credentials and perhaps in this case experience in, teaching health, teaching mental health education, letting us know why they would be interested in participating, and then we would go through our process of selecting working groups and committees that would then convene.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Van Wy, for that. Can you talk about what's included in your selection process? You indicate that you indicated the process leading up to kind of the decision making, but I guess I'm really interested in making sure that there's statewide, regional, a variety of individuals that would be eligible to participate. And so I'm curious to just hear a little bit more about what goes into the selection process itself. And I'm also interested in better understanding the selection process for the subject matter expert that the department is looking to contract with.
Certainly. Through the chair, the selection process applications from stakeholders across Alaska do include the very things that you mentioned, regional representation, grade level representation. I believe the applications often ask for, number of years of experience in, in a content area. So those factors are always included. So when groups of stakeholders are convened, we know that there's representation from across Alaska, lots of different districts, lots of different grade levels represented, and so on. As far as a facilitator, we could certainly get you additional information on, exactly how a facilitator for this particular work would be selected. I know that there, as a state agency, we follow procurement rules, so there are RFPs for contracts that are issued where we're looking for, someone with content area expertise that we would need to accomplish this work, and then we would follow the process to select the person who could best accomplish the goals of the task.
Follow-up?
Not a follow-up, but I guess more of a comment for consideration. I do believe that if the department needs, a 20-year-old standards for health education are quite dated, and we've made such advances in technology and health and research, and it makes sense with regard to the work that needs to be done at the department in order to meet those standards for Alaska students. But it does seem peculiar and somewhat out of the scope of this particular bill to include that as a fiscal requirement in order to meet this particular standard. So while I understand the department's needs overall and how we can evaluate making sure that the department has the resources that they need, in this subject matter as a whole, it does seem beyond the scope of this particular legislation to want to do a wholesale review of those standards in order to meet the needs of this bill, but those are just some thoughts.
I tend to agree with you, Representative Zulkowski. Ms. Van Wy, in terms of the Alaska's Education Challenge and the goal of school health and safety, how would this, does this, it seems to me that this mental health education requirement would fit in perfectly with the goal of keeping students safe and healthy. Can you speak to that a little bit? And also in terms of updating the standards, does the department have a schedule for updating standards? And why hasn't it been updated in over 20 years?
Thank you for the question. Co-Chair Drummond, first related to Alaska's Education Challenge, yes, one of the 5 priority areas is related to health and safety. The addressing trauma and mental health in our schools is incredibly important. It's, the priority related to health and safety is one of 5 main priorities that resulted from the work of Alaska's Education Challenge. One of the tools that the department has worked in collaboration with other agencies and organizations to create is a document called Transforming Schools, a framework for trauma-engaged practice in Alaska. And I believe that the committee has, I believe that Chair Fields actually talked about that document in his presentation on behalf of the state board the other day, and some of you may be in possession of that document. That's an example of a working document that addresses trauma, mental health concerns, caring for students and educating students beyond, traditional. What I would say is traditional health education in Alaska, and it's very much tailored to Alaska's schools and Alaska's students. So that's an example of how the department is responding to that priority of the health and safety priority in Alaska's Education Challenge. And then the second question about does the department have a schedule for updating standards? Yes, there is a schedule designed to ensure that we are addressing standards in the order of most necessity. Is perhaps the most accurate way to say it. And of course, our language arts and math standards are front and center, very closely followed by science, because those are content area standards for which we give statewide assessments. So those are always very high priority. Social studies standards are the next in line, and I will have to check with department staff to find out exactly where our health and skills for healthy living standards are in that lineup. And it's true, 20 years is a long time since those standards have been updated. But because they are voluntary, those standards are not required. We don't require that districts follow those standards. They have not had the same sort of urgency. And we have done other things like the Transforming Schools framework, for example, to address some of the very immediate and district-specific needs in that area.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Y, could you make sure that we have copies of Transforming Schools for the Education Committee members? Yesterday in House Health and Social Services, each member got a copy, and we have a little crossover in that Representative Zulkowski is chair of House HES. So here we are again in that crossover of responsibilities between departments, where the health and safety of our young people is first and foremost, and crosses departmental responsibilities. Any further questions for Ms. Van Wy? Okay, seeing none. Thank you very much for your testimony this morning. Anyone else in the room? Oh, well, I believe public testimony is still open on this bill, so we will now continue with public testimony.
Madam Chair, just for a note, we also have a video to play. I'm not sure whether you want to hear that
Right.
before public testimony or after public testimony.
Okay, let's back up a minute, pardon me. Let's back up from public testimony and take a brief at ease to get the film turned on. Okay, back on the record to turn on the film by students from Mental Health Advocacy Through Storytelling, or MHATS. We heard from many of them the other day in our first session on this bill.
Law, there's this paragraph that describes what's supposed to be taught in health classes. This includes things like healthy relationships. In Alaska state law, there's this paragraph that describes what's supposed to be taught in health classes. This includes things like healthy relationships, cancer prevention, knowledge about alcohol and substance abuse. But there's one category that is hugely missing.
And mental health.
And mental health.
And mental health.
And mental health. And mental health. If we truly want to teach our students how to be healthy and happy for the rest of their lives, we need to treat mental health as just an important part of health as physical health. So HB 181 aims to add 3 simple words: and mental health.
I definitely see a lot of my peers and friends dealing with mental health and feeling it in a sense of like having so much stress, anxiety, but not really understanding what mental health or mental illness is in general.
So personally, I have struggled with depression and anxiety for most of my teenage life. And it began in 8th grade. I suffered a very severe depressive episode coupled with lots of suicidal ideation. And luckily, I was able to have a really supportive family who got me help. But it's really unreasonable to assume that the majority of teenagers suffering from this kind of issue have the same access.
Other students aren't so lucky.
1 in 5 individuals aged 13 to 18 have a diagnosable mental illness.
This is even more prevalent among Alaskan teens. 36% of us have reported that we've experienced a depressive episode, and 12% of us have attempted suicide.
It's frankly irresponsible to not support legislation for providing mental health education.
Overwhelmingly, teenagers want to talk about mental health and the experience that they're having because it is the defining experience of a lot of people's education.
I think what ends up happening is that students end up going to each other for information and Google and they start kind of cross-referencing their information. And a lot of times it can be really inaccurate. Testing to see if I was depressed or not on Google did not solve any problem.
My classmates don't know where to go for help. They don't know who to turn to. They don't feel like they have people to turn to.
So instead of dealing with the emotions or handling them, I just kind of pushed them down, and I went into a really dark place and I didn't know what to do about it.
That's me. That's your friends, your family, your nieces and nephews, your grandchildren, and most importantly, those are your constituents.
50% of all lifetime cases begin by age 14. So by the time that freshmen enter high school, half of those who will experience mental illness in their entire life will already have some of those early onset symptoms.
And so the earlier that we start that conversation with kids and the more information that we give to them, the better tools that they have to deal with their stress, their anxiety, or their friends' stress and anxiety.
This bill, I believe that it can save actual, real human lives. And it is your responsibility as lawmakers to protect the lives of your citizens.
Please support HB 181 and mandate mental health education in K through 12 schools.
I'm Claire and I support mental health education in Alaska.
I'm Jessica, and I support mental health education in Alaska.
I'm Bella and I support mental health education in Alaska.
I'm Gabby, and I support mental health education in Alaska.
I'm Zoe, and I support mental health education in Alaska.
I'm Natalie, and I support mental health education in Alaska.
That was terrific. Okay, now how do we make it mandatory? Does this bill make it mandatory?
Madam Chair,
That seems to me, this is what our students are asking us for, is to make it mandatory.
so Madam Chair, the statute, what we heard from the person from Deed is correct, that the statute does not require it. There are guidelines for districts to follow, but it's not required to follow them. So I would say that's at this point, a question for the committee, if the committee's interested in making it mandatory in the same way that you've got some mandatory guidelines that we heard about for social studies and English and math. That would mean I would suggest a relatively minor amendment to the bill.
All right. Any further discussion? And Representative Story.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for all the information you presented today, and I too was very moved by the students and the videos. Excellent. In talking about the bill and how it would be implemented, it talks about once the standards are there, it talks about using existing health educators and counselors in the school. And I know that, for example, the Juneau School District, with the cuts they've taken, they're down to one counselor for 450 in two of their main high schools, and one for 500 in the other. And it seems like, and this is mostly comment to members of the committee here, the implementation of it is so important, because we can, and we should, I believe this is something should be in law, but I think districts will see it as an unfunded mandate, and that they don't have the tools to do it well. Many of them do, and part of it has to do with the level of education funding in the state. But it is so important, and how are we going to move on to provide resources that it will be delivered in our high schools. And when I say, and when we talk about our academic standards being updated, they're very important. But if we are dealing with the health, whether our brain health, our mental health, or physical health, we're not going to be able to learn our math and our science and our social studies. So to me, this is would bump the priority of social studies in updating standards, because we have learned over the last 20 years and more that if our emotional health, our adverse childhood experiences aren't addressed, if we can't identify and name our mental health issues, like these students have so aptly done, it's given them the tools to cope, to overcome, to help their peers, and then they're open to learning. So, thank you for bringing this forward.
So I would just note, and the only thing I would note is that there's been a lot of discussion about adding counselors and specifically social workers, and like the Lower Yukon district has been working and adding social workers. I completely agree that that's important, but this bill is not about adding the social workers, and so the social workers and the counselors actually aren't the ones that are teaching health classes. The challenge of funding is really acute, and apparently the Anchorage School Board voted in the last few days to basically eliminate all the health teacher positions and then have other teachers teach the health curriculum. They're still teaching health in schools, but you no longer have specific health teachers as a product of budget cuts, and it's a reminder of how stretched thin we are. But this bill is primarily about getting mental health in the curriculum so that at least, even if we sadly don't have the counselors that we probably all agree are necessary, at least in the classroom when they're talking about health, they're actually hearing about mental health as well. I'm reminded that 25 years ago when I went to the doctor, he might not ask how my mental health was, but now when I go for a physical, I seem to get those questions. The doctor, it's the same doctor, but the questions have changed.
Representative Zokoski.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Rep. Klayman, for showing that video. I can't help but comment that it's true that when we don't offer the resources that our students are asking for, they're going to go to any sort of means necessary to find information and resources, whether that's online or peer-to-peer. And I don't know about anybody else on this committee, but Google autofill would confirm that I'm not alone in Googling symptoms and going from Googling about having a sore throat to suddenly, I'm worried I have cancer. So, it's lighthearted and it's funny as we think about that as adults, but thinking about how impressionable and vulnerable our youth are, it just seems like this is such a critical piece of legislation, and I look forward to hopefully seeing it continue to move this session.
It also seems to me that social studies, this could be infused through social studies, through science curricula. It has applications and the ability to be throughout the curriculum. And I think we have extremely creative school districts in terms of doing this, in terms of working with this. Have you, as a sponsor and staff, looked at available curricula from other jurisdictions in terms of developing curriculum? And I'm sure that NAMI and those folks are all working furiously to help us get through this process.
So, Madam Chair, we actually, one of the discussions is, are we creating an unfunded mandate? That's been one of the questions about the bill. And so we've been very focused primarily on setting state standards and recognizing that the districts are actually better equipped than the State Department of Education to determine what is the curriculum to have in that particular district. And we actually, as sponsors of the bill, we're not advocating that we should go through a process of laying down a detailed curriculum on a statewide level, because I think that takes away the very local control that I at least believe is essential to strengthening our schools.
All right. Any further questions for the sponsor? Okay, seeing none, thank you. As I said earlier, public testimony is still open on this bill. We have a couple of folks online. I have Richard Nowitzki. Are you still with us, sir?
Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please put your name and affiliation on the record and speak to us, please.
Sure. My name is Richard Nowitzki. I am a physician. I am the Director of Pediatric Emergency Medicine at Providence Hospital, where I work as an emergency physician and, like I said, Medical Director of the Pediatric Emergency Program there. I am calling in support of House Bill 181. I was quite moved by that video clip. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. I think that speaks volumes to what we feel in the emergency department when we get these patients, because as you probably are all aware, the emergency department is where ultimately the most severe cases arrive. We're kind of the safe house or the final destination for a lot of these youth that have difficulties with these issues end up. The data I'm sure that you've seen or heard, the CDC data is showing a 31% increase in the total suicide rate during a period from 2001 to 2017 across all age groups, but in particular in the teenage age groups. That mirrors what we see in our department. I think that there's also heaps of research and data that shows that recognition of depression by peers helps improve treatment and presentation to treatment before things get out of hand. And I think that any bill that would, or any act that would increase education in our youth in this area would be helpful for reducing morbidity and mortality associated with depression and suicide, as well as hopefully save health dollars downstream by avoiding expensive ER visits and hopefully treating this sooner than later.
Thank you, Dr. Nowitzki. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions for the testifier? This is, you're more on the order of you should be invited testimony considering your position. Thank you very much, sir, and we will make sure that you get access to that video. It was indeed very moving.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate that.
Thank you. Next up, I have Chris Eichenlaub on the phone. Mr. or Ms. Eichenlaub, are you on the phone?
Hello, this is Chris Eichenlaub.
Yes, go ahead. Put your name and affiliation on the record and go ahead and speak to us.
Okay. So you got for the record, you got my name, Chris Eichenlaub from Eagle River. Hey, this HB 181, we probably don't really need a specific bill more than we need, we need instruction of the children. And a little background on me, I did Little League coaching, youth football, worked with youth in the youth academy, and I kind of see where these kids are going. I mean, a lot of their instruction, I think, I'm not a psychiatrist, but a lot of the mental illnesses and stuff are caused by destructive behavior. And I would call it, if you want to have this bill, maybe destructive human behavior. We need to teach the youth, drugs, alcohol, and these things are large contributors to the suicide rates that we're having. The LGBTQ, I know that it'll probably upset a lot of people, but it needs to be taught at a young age that is an unhealthy lifestyle and things that are associated with it that cause confusion in these kids. And, I just would like you to think about those things a little bit. If we're going to teach, and want the kids to be, we're concerned with their mental health, we need to teach the things that are extremely bad that contribute to these factors that, cause suicide. The ultimate, worst thing we want with our kids is them hurting others or themselves. So that's all I got. Are you guys got any questions for me?
I don't see any questions. Thank you, Mr. Eichenlaub. Appreciate your testimony this morning.
Okay. Peace out.
Okay. Is there, I have no one else on the phone. Is there anyone in the room who wishes to testify on this bill? In that case, we will close public testimony. Any further discussion from committee members on this bill today? All right, hearing none, I'm going to hold this bill and request that any members that have proposed amendments to House Bill 181 to submit them to my office by 2 p.m. on Friday. The committee will not be meeting this Friday, February 21st, as almost all of us are going to be gone, and we'll continue next week. I'm not sure what the schedule is yet. So with that, we are adjourned at 9:32 a.m.